Bonjour à tous, bienvenue à la Maison des scénaristes. Et donc nous avons l'honneur d'accueillir aujourd'hui parmi nous Israe Horowitz. Donc c'est pas vraiment la peine, je pense, de faire des présentations. Et nous sommes vraiment très 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 heureux de sa présence et c'est un immense honneur.
Il y a quelqu'un ici qui parle anglais. Il y a quelqu'un qui ne parle pas anglais. Qui parle pas anglais.
Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui ne comprend pas? C'est vrai qu'entre parler et comprendre, ça peut faire c'est plus difficile de parler que d'arriver à comprendre, je pense. Est-ce que quelqu'un ne comprend, ne peut pas du tout comprendre une conversation ou un discours en anglais?
Avant le midi, je parle français comme une vache espagnole. Après le midi, je parle français comme deux vaches espagnoles.
Donc personne ne comprend pas du tout l'anglais.
Quel est le sujet? What's the subject? It's adaptation du théâtre.
Alors
It's Israe Horowitz.
Okay.
And his work.
Votre rapport à l'écriture, comment est-ce que vous êtes passé le cinéma, le rapport avec les réalisateurs, mais surtout votre façon d'écrire qui est quand même très incisive, très précise. Donc c'est vrai que c'est c'est assez large, hein, mais voilà, ici c'est la maison des scénaristes, donc effectivement on peut passer assez facilement d'un scénario, d'une pièce de théâtre à un scénario, et comment tout ça s'est un peu organisé dans votre vie.
Tout d'abord, je suis né dans un tout petit village dans le Massachusetts. Mon père était chauffeur de camion. Donc, ma vie, à mon avis, c'est sur le miracle. J'ai commencé à écrire, j'ai écrit un roman à 13 ans. C'était un échec. Maybe you should translate. I sent my manuscript. I was 13 years old. I sent my manuscript to a publisher in New York.
Oui, donc il a envoyé son manuscrit à un éditeur à New York. Et vous comprenez en fait, je pense. They understand. So
Everybody's understanding. Il y a quelqu'un qui comprend pas.
Tout le monde comprend, c'est qu'il y a peut-être des personnes qui parlent pas bien anglais, mais tout le monde comprend.
Okay. So I sent my manuscript to a publisher, an editor in New York, who refused my manuscript. He said it wasn't for him, but he praised it for having a wonderful childlike quality, because he didn't realize j'avais 13 ans. Pour moi, c'était un grand échec et j'ai commencé à écrire ma première pièce de théâtre. I saw a play. Somebody gave my father some tickets to a play about a black family on the south side of Chicago. And it was the first play I saw. I was perhaps 11 or 12 years old. And I thought it was a great privilege. The pièce de théâtre gave me a great privilege to enter the home. It wasn't so funny. To enter the home of a black family on the south side of Chicago, I thought I would never have this privilege. And I became really excited about the idea of theater. Cinema to me, what's happening? Cinema to me seemed like something impossible when I was a kid. I watched cowboy movies at the local cinema. It just seemed like another planet. Once I began to write plays, for some miraculous reason, they had success and they gave me a life. And my first play in New York was called Le Premier, was called Line, and the reprise of Le Premier has been running continuously in a small theater in Greenwich Village for 43 years. So it's a long time. My second play was with called Lundi on cherche le Bronx, and it was with a completely unknown actor called Al Pacino and a completely unknown actor called John Cazale, and it was our first film, our first play for all of us. And the play was invited to the Festival dei Due Mondi in Spoleto, Italy. And there I met a young French guy who was Regie for Olby's play. And he asked if he could translate Lundi on cherche le Bronx and another play of mine called... So you're at the wrong place because it's so much more fun. And another play called Super Doge, and then a third play that I showed in Spoleto that was brand new called Très Obscur. And a guy named Michel Fagado produced Lundi on cherche le Bronx and Super Doge in Paris with Laurent Terziev. And they allowed the guy who translated the plays to direct Très Obscur at midnight. And I left New York and saw Pacino in Indian Wants the Bronx, came to Paris, saw Lundi on cherche le Bronx with Terziev, who was too old, and Marcel Dalio played the East Indian and just spoke God knows what with a mouchoir on his head. And I thought, oh, it's okay. And then at midnight I went into the theater and I saw an actor on stage, a young actor doing his first play, my play, and I thought, oh my God, there's a French Al Pacino, and it was Gérard Depardieu doing his first play, and he did my first play. So I've been really lucky having wonderful actors. And I was asked during the Spoleto Festival, I got in those days a telegram asking me to write a film called The Strawberry Statement. And in French it was called Les Fraises du Sang. And eventually I came to Cannes with the film, and it won the Prix du Jury here. And I had hair down to here, and the press, the journalists asked me if I liked the film. I said no, it's no good. And so the production sent me to Saint-Tropez until the voting was done, and then they brought me back and I went up on stage and I said, in the only French I could speak, I said, c'était 1970. I said, la lutte continue. And everybody was in smoking and they're saying, quelle lutte? Anyway, it started me in this kind of schizophrenic double life of writing plays for theater and writing film. After Des Fraises du Sang, I was offered a film with Jacqueline Bisset and Michael Saracen to write and direct. And just before we started pre-production, and I realized that if I did this film, it would take 2 years. And that in those days, I was writing at least one play for the theater each year. So I thought, I don't want to not have 2 plays, so I quit. After 60 years, when I was 74 years old, after whatever 50 years, my brain only doesn't do mathematics at all. I knew that I was going to turn 75, and I thought I want to do something different. I've had 70 pièces de théâtre play in New York City. I've had 50 pièces de théâtre play in Paris. It's a miracle, and it's exciting, but it doesn't terrify me. And I wanted to do something that would scare me. Can you understand why? That I wanted to just really feel my life in a different way. And My play Très Chère Mathilde, I'm sure none of you saw it, but it was in Paris for 1 year with an old French chanteuse Pauline Renaud, and at Marigny, which was in those days dirigé par Pierre Lescure, who's now running the Cannes Film Festival. So you have to be careful what you say to people. And the play was done. It's called My Old Lady in English, and it was really done around the world. And I was invited to go to Russia to see the play at the Moscow Art Theater. And for écrivain de théâtre, having a play at the Moscow Art Theater, it's like, St. Peter calling from heaven and saying, we have a place for you when you're ready. So off we went to Moscow, and the actors playing the Kristen Scott Thomas part and Kevin Kline part were quite good. But the old lady must have had a wonderful career for 70 years. But I never saw her career for 70 years, and I was just looking at a very old lady who looked remarkably like Elvis Presley at the end of his life. And for some reason, she changed her costume every 2 minutes, which had nothing to do with my play. So my wife was asleep beside me, and I started to daydream, and I thought, why did I write this play? And I remembered that I wrote the play because I wanted to write a kind of love letter to La France, because again, my father was a truck driver. I come from a little town, and here I was with 50 plays translated in plays in France, and I wanted to say, thank you, I love you, thank you for giving me this life. So I was looking at the play and I was thinking, but where is Paris? There are just 3 actors in a room talking. And so I started to daydream, we say. I started to dream Kevin Kline's character walking in the streets of Paris and my Paris, the Paris that I love. And I really started to dream the movie. And when the play was over, I had to go on the stage and bow with the actors, and they gave me flowers. And I went straight to my wife and I said, I want to make a film of this play. And I went to my daughter in New York, and I asked her. My daughter Rachel Horowitz was the producer of Mr. Schmidt, About Schmidt with Nicholson and Besieged, Bertolucci. She did Moneyball. I don't know the title in French, but Le Stratégiste, I think, or something. Sur le Baseball. She's done a lot of films. Anyway, she said yes, that she would work with me on the film of My Old Lady. And so I should tell you this story. I was in Paris, and I think in this life, as you probably know, if you want to do something very difficult, you begin by telling people that you're definitely doing it. And you just lie, and you say, I'm directing a film of My Old Lady. And people say, that's wonderful. And little by little, it starts to be true or not. And a kind of famous agent in Paris called me and said, would you have lunch with Isabelle Adjani to play the role of Chloe? And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't see the personage quite that way, because I was already thinking of Maggie Smith as Mathilde, and I didn't want to say that out loud, and I thought, Isabelle Adjani, the daughter of Maggie Smith? I don't think so. And he said, well, why don't you just have lunch with Adjani? And I thought, schmuck, why wouldn't I have lunch with Isabelle Adjani? So I said yes. And usually when I have meetings in Paris, I do it at Café de Flore. On the first floor is always quiet. Everybody's downstairs trying to be seen by everybody else, and you can. So I was upstairs with the agent and Adjani, and the agent said to me, who is your dream casting for Matthias, for the role of the guy? And I had never said this out loud before to anyone, not even my daughter, and I said, Kevin Kline. At the moment I said Kevin Kline, Kevin Kline himself appeared at the top of the stairs. So I thought that the agent and Ajani were playing a joke on me. But then I thought, well, how did they know I was going to say Kevin Kline? I could have said Barack Obama. And so Kevin saw me and he waved and I waved. And he came over, he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm going to direct a movie of My Old Lady and I want you to play the lead. And he said, well, I'd love to read the script. Now, I should tell you, all through my life in New York, Kevin Kline was known to people as Kevin Decline because he said no to everything. So I thought when he said, give me the script, that he was just being polite. Later he told me that his first thought was, he's never going to send me the script, he's just being polite. When I got back to New York, we got the script to him, and a few days later he called me up and said, I would love to play this role. This is a great role for me. And so now we begin with the subject. It's so difficult to adapt a theater piece for cinema because, as you no doubt know, theater is another planet from film. Theater is very dependent on language, long speeches, and when you write a play that's a successful play and you see it many times, you remember every time the audience laughed, every time the audience cried, so it became impossible for me to cut a long speech. That worked. And I added characters and I added scenes of Paris, but the damn thing just kept getting longer instead of better. It wasn't like a film at all. It was just like a long thing that was wasn't quite a play, stage play, and it wasn't quite a film. Kevin Kline is a really great collaborator, and he would come to my house and we'd invite actors, and every time I did another jet, from the premier jet to the 25e jet, we would do a reading with actors at my house. I think it's very, very important to hear actors read dialogue. And little by little, it became less of a play and more of a film. But I'll tell you something true that I don't talk about a lot. At some point, I thought, this is impossible. I'm failing. This is not a scenario. It's not a film script at all. So I wrote the story of the play like a guy walks into a bar. It was just one page, and I just wrote, an American gets an apartment in Paris par héritage. Il arrive à Paris, vend cet appartement, découvre une vieille dame et sa fille qui habite là. And so I just wrote the story like I could tell you in 2 minutes. And then I wrote another draft based on that story without looking at a page from the play. And everything that was really important came back through my memory, but the actors said much, much less. And things that seemed very important in the play, suddenly, as I started to imagine Dominique Pinon and those other characters in my movie, it just became a film. We sent the script. I felt it was enough of a movie to send to Maggie Smith, who I never met in my life. And I've watched Downton Abbey 5,000 times like you have, and her agent called and said she wants to do the film, but you have to fly to London to meet with her. And so I came to London, and the first thing she said to me was, I have maybe 20 scripts sent to me, and if I say yes, it will be a movie, a film. Do you want to know why I chose your script? So I watched Downton Abbey, so I knew that she would say something that would hurt me. And I said, yes, of course. Why did you choose my script? And she said, because I don't have to die at the end of your script, darling. We began this wonderful adventure. As you probably know, Kristen Scott, I was going to cast Jane Birkin in the beginning, and she had a huge concert schedule. We shot the film in 23 days. I only had 23 days, and I only had 22, and I fought, and I got 23. Our budget was less than $3 million. It was really, we raised the money for the film here at Cannes, at the festival, by pre-selling territories. After all, I was a 74-year-old debutante. I was a first-time director, age 74. People were saying, "Can we get insurance? And are you healthy? Let me see your teeth." It was really awful. I don't know how many of you have done it, have been here raising money for a film where you meet somebody sits down with you and says, my name is Joop, I'm from the Netherlands, I haven't read your script, why should I put money in your film? And you want to say, va faire foot, but you don't, because you want the film. So we did it, and really little by little we got the money, and we began to shoot. Even on the set, there were still speeches that were too long. There was still too much like a stage play. And I don't know if you know anything, if you've seen the film or know anything about the play, but it is a play. It is a story of somebody who gets in a big apartment in Paris, par héritage. So I was stuck with the apartment. I couldn't go to the top of a mountain. It was about an apartment. So I had a big I should tell you that when I was a kid, when I first came to New York, one of my first jobs was to direct. I was writing and directing television commercials. So I knew camera a bit anyway. And of course, when you do commercials, it's very fast, and especially back then in the 60s. I had a chef d'op de le top. I had a guy named Michel Amachu, who's just really a genius, and he was a great collaborator. When I was I should also tell you this, the day before we began to rehearse, I had wonderful casting with French actors, because I've worked in theater so much in France. We have Dominique Pinon, Stéphane Fraisse, Stéphane de Groot, Naomi Lovovsky, just really wonderful French actors in the smaller roles. And the day before we started rehearsal, I thought, this is stupid. These are wonderful actors, Maggie Smith, Kevin Kline, Kristen Scott Thomas. They deserve a real director, not me. I should quit. The first day of rehearsal, I realized everybody came from theater. Every single actor in my film was a theater actor. So my biggest problem was to stop Maggie Smith and Kevin Kline from talking about, being in the retroviseur and talking about theater in 1972. But suddenly rehearsal was like every stage play I'd ever directed in terms of working with the actors. And that really is my strength as a director, is working with actors. I really know what actors need. It's been my life since I was 17, and I'm 76, so that's a lot of actors and a lot of plays. The first day of rehearsal, I asked Maggie to move from the chair to a chest to get a watch or something, and she said, if I do that, my friends will laugh at me. And I said, why? And she said, I'm playing 92 years old. I should really stay in my chair. And I thought about my mother when she was 94 years old, was in a chair with a cushion here and a cushion there, and it was really, her world was the chair. And I thought, by God, it doesn't matter that I've spent 2 weeks planning out this scene, she's right. She should be in the chair. And I saw Michel Amachu standing over there, and he was laughing. And he was talking to the focus puller, and they were really happy. And I said, what is it? And he said, if you put her in the chair and keep her in the chair, you can stage everybody around her anywhere in the room, and I can always give you great angles, and you won't feel like you're stuck in an apartment. And I trusted him 110%. And it worked just that way. Whenever he said we don't have light, I didn't say hurry up. I said, okay, tell me when you're ready. And it was really like having a partner on the film. And I cannot tell you what a happy enough. It was such a happy adventure for me. So, do you have questions? Maybe we should do that.
I have a question.
Yes.
What exactly brings you to writing when you were 30 years old killed?
It's not an answer you expect. I really had a very difficult enfance. My father was violent. I thought my role, my purpose, I think we all have one question in life, and that's why am I on earth? And comme enfant, comme a young kid, I thought my purpose in life was to stop my father from killing my mother. So whenever they were about ready to fight, I would jump in between and make sure that he hit me instead of my mother. Maybe this isn't something to just say at Pavillon 22, but that's the truth. So I'm sure as a young kid, I wanted to escape from real life, and I could escape from real life with my writing. I could enter a world that was completely of my creation. And I think that all of us ultimately create our lives. You know, we have an image of ourselves, we have a dream of what we want to be. Maybe we fail to reach the dream, but we become something different from what our parents planned for us. And that's why you're here and other people are in their offices selling insurance or whatever they're doing. But I must say this because I believe it from my heart. I think the artist is born in the suffering child. I think a child can suffer in a very wealthy, nice family as much as a child can suffer in a different. And whenever I talk with other artists who are serious artists, I'm not talking about people who are writing boulevard comedy. I'm talking about people who are really trying to say something about life. It's inevitably it comes up that enfance was difficult. That's not the answer you expected.
I didn't expect any answer or every answer.
Well, sometimes the answer is, you know, my father owned a theater or he owned a chain of cinema. Wasn't my case.
I wanted the real answer, so I get a real answer. And what exactly? You told us you sent a manuscript. It was a novel.
It was a roman, s'appelle Steinberg, Sex and the Saint. Three things I knew nothing about. But again, I was in a world, you know, of imagination, and I thought this will sell. This roman. J'avais 13 ans.
And what brings you to write theater? Why theater, and why not continue?
Well, I really felt that I had failed as a romancier. It was very clear to me that I had to find something else quickly, and so I saw this play that really took me someplace I would never go. I thought I would never go. And I was so impressed, so I wanted to try that. And I can tell you, the first play I wrote was called Le Retour, The Comeback. And it was a play, a two-character play with a son and a father, and the son kills the father. It wasn't a great success, but nobody said to me, this is a good play, but everybody said, it's a play. And I thought, okay, I wrote a play, I know who I am, I'm an écrivain de théâtre, and I just began.
You said...
It's there.
Yeah, you said that you had a difficult childhood, and that gives you inspiration to write.
Yes.
So I am in your theater, what you wrote, theater or movie, your life is really the support of the story. There is a lot of your life in what you write.
Yes,
I imagine, because that's.
I hope so. I mean, it's. I think that. Really, what I was thinking when you said that was, do you know Angela's Ashes of Frank McCourt? Do any of you know that? It's a book by an Irish writer named Frank McCourt, and he had the most terrible childhood in Ireland, and as an adult he became a very, very famous writer in America, and he said, en français. Ma vie m'a sauvé ma vie. My life saved my life. And he had the most terrible enfance, but he wrote about it, and it made a great success, and made him a famous writer. And he felt also that he was bringing comfort to people, because it's not so unusual to find somebody who had a tough time in childhood. I think we have a big responsibility as artists. If you're going to put the word artist on your forehead, you better have something to say to people. That there are so many people working in offices and whatever they're doing, and we're just thinking about life and why people do what they do. And I do think that there really only is one big question, and that's everybody is thinking, why am I alive? Life is limited. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And nobody turns to his wife and said, let's buy 2 tickets to the movie to find out why we're alive. But I think that question is under everything. It's the reason art exists. And we don't have good answers as filmmakers or as theater people or as artists, but we have good questions. And I think sometimes when people realize that they're not alone with their questions, because people who suffer really feel that they are alone, that everybody else is laughing like those people over there, and only we are depressed and suffering. And I think when we recognize that it's part of the human condition, we can relax a bit.
I mean, it's not obvious when you need to write about something, a subject, because you've got a story to tell. It may not be your own story. Some people suffer a lot, and they can't talk about what they're being through. When there is a lot of suffering, sometimes you just can't, and you write things around. There is a pieces, but you just can't tell, like directly from the front line.
Honestly,
it's not so easy. I mean,
I think you can't write what you don't know. So maybe you change the story, but you can always find yourself. And I think il y a une grande différence entre des choses le public voudrait et les choses le public besoin. There's a big difference between what interests the public isn't always in the best public interest. So sometimes we really, as artists, have to create what people don't want, but what they need. So you have to find a way to use humor or something that will bring the people into your film, and once you have them, then you have something to say, I hope.
How does a subject come?
I have no idea.
Really?
Really, it's amazing. All these years, I have really no idea. I just know that something just pulls at me and keeps pulling me, and finally I just begin. But I don't. At the moment, for the first time in my life, I have a commission. A theater in New York asked me to write. I just did a play with Estelle Parsons. She did Très chère Mathilde in Floride, actually. And Estelle Parsons won the Oscar for Bonnie and Clyde il y a 100 ans. And the theater commissioned a play, and I'm supposed to read some pages on June 10th, and I haven't written one word, not one word. I've never done this before, and if I once had a job from a chaîne de télé, TV, CBS, to adapt a Norman Mailer novel, and after a few months I hated it. I just hated it, and I gave the money back. And I think in this life the most difficult thing is to give the money back, and I couldn't do it. So I think I'm really, it's just my reason is to I was arriving in Paris once, and I heard Jean-Claude Gombert being interviewed on the radio, and he told the story of being a 4-year-old boy in his house, and the Nazis, the French Nazis, came into his house, and they took his mother, his father, his grandfather, his grandmother, his brothers, his sisters, and this one policeman saw this little boy, 4 years old, and just went like that, and he hid. And they took everybody, and everybody was killed, and he was alone. And voisine took him and then got him out of Paris, and he told this story on the radio. And then the stupid interviewer said, "Why do you write?" And he said, "To tell this story." It's so simple. It's so, and I was very, very impressed by that. I was very impressed, and I thought this is really, it's exactly what Frank McCourt said. You know, you can take a terrible enfance, and it can save your life. Really, it can give you a life. That there's something positive to be found as long as we're alive. There was a guy who won the Nobel Prize, a Scandinavian guy I'd never heard of. And I went to a bookstore because I thought, oh, he won the Nobel Prize, I should know something about him. And it's terrible in New York. I mean, and anyway, they found one book by this guy. And I opened the book, and the first thing I read was, "If not for the possibility of suicide, I would have killed myself years ago." And I laughed so hard. It's so true.
You say you don't want to adapt books of another, but is there one book you want to adapt? Just one?
No,
never.
No, I'm. You mean for cinema? No, I think it's
even a novel for theater.
I don't think I'm good at it. It's not my game, you know. That's for other people. I'm just not good at it. I did an adaptation of a Tennessee Williams story, and there's very little of Tennessee Williams in this. You know, I just changed it too much, and they looked at it and said, "This isn't the story." And I'm sorry, but I think I have the energy to do a couple more films, and I really want to adapt plays of mine. And I have a play called, it was just in Paris, called Opus Coeur. Sometimes it has a title, Quelque part dans cette vie. It's a play that Jane Birkin did. And first it was Pierre Dux, and then he died, and then there was a reprise with Jacques Dufilo, and he died, and then it's an old man. And then there was a reprise with Pierre Vanek, and he died, and now there's a reprise with Marcel Marichal, and thank God he's doing very well. He's okay. But I think I do have a play about Pierre Bonnard. I want to shoot it. I loved making a film in France. I loved it. I'm working with a French crew, and I want to do it again.
Do you think sometime, do you say to yourself, I should have done this before to direct a movie? Or not?
I don't know. I just don't know. The theater has given me such a wonderful life, and it's really an amazing life where, okay, I'm not rich. It's not but it's not important to me. Do you know who Joseph Heller was? He wrote Catch-22. He was a romancier, and you know who Kurt Vonnegut was? He was an American novelist, quite good. And when Heller died, Vonnegut did a eulogy at the funeral, and he told a story that they were at the home of a billionaire, a very, very, very rich guy. And Vonnegut said to Joe Heller, because Catch-22 was a very successful roman, and then it was a Mike Nichols movie, of course. And Vonnegut said to him, "Does it bother you that the guy who owns this house made more money yesterday than you'll make in your lifetime with Catch-22?" And Joe Heller said, "No, because I know something this guy will never know." And Vonnegut said, "What's that?" And he said, "I know that I have enough." And it's simply true. You only need enough. And theater has given me more than enough. It's enough food, but it's just given me a wonderful life. And I don't think I would be here today if I hadn't done theater. I think it's led me to this. And I don't know if I would have been, I just don't know. And then what's the point? What's the point of living in the retroviseur? You know, you can only look behind you.
Just to think, because you said you said I will not succeed to do it. You think it appears to your head that it will be difficult and you may not succeed. So maybe you don't do this because you're afraid, and you follow doing and writing what you know, because you like that, because it gives you just good things, you know what I mean? And just said, no, it's not for me. And when you do it and said, come on, you may think I should have tried this before. You reply to the question, but
I'm being honest. I don't. It's not a regret. I'd love to be able to say, oh, I had a regret, and now I don't. But I didn't, because I wrote the 2 plays that year, and I thought they made the movie that I wrote, and I thought it was really a bad movie, and so I was soulagé. I was really relieved. I played golf. I used to run marathons, and now I'm old and I'm slow, and I took up golf with one of my sons. And it was, I know that you're French, so you hate golf, but it's not a snob thing in America. It's very proletariat, it's very cheap, and to be with your kid in a green place for 4 hours talking about life is really wonderful. But I play golf when I'm in France sometimes with this French guy, who's a wonderful guy, pretty successful guy, but I know a lot about his childhood, because whenever he hits the ball, he says, "Oh no," and sometimes the ball goes in the hole, but he always says, "Oh no," and we you know, our limits, we set our limits between our ears, I think, sometimes.
What did you feel when your first play was in the stage? What does it change for you?
I was in it. It's just, as I said, I just knew who I was suddenly. I knew I had to get out of that house. I had to make a life as quickly as possible. And when somebody said that was a play, I thought, okay, I'm a playwright. That's who I am. And I just started writing like a crazy person, play after play after play after play. And Pacino had pretty much the same kind of childhood that I had. He pretty much grew up in the street in New York. He had no idea who his father was. After Pacino was extremely successful, a guy showed up in his life called Sal Pacino and said, "I'm your dad." And he made a workout video, you know, an exercise video, and on the video it said Al Pacino's father. Anyway, he certainly didn't have a father growing up. And when we did L'Indien Cherche le Bronx, if a critic had given us a bad review, we would have gone to the critic's house and beaten him. I'm sure of it. And it just had to work, and it did. I think it had that kind of passion and energy that takes you somewhere. And I know I teach a little bit now. I teach 3 weeks now, each spring with La Fermis, with the French National Film School, and Columbia University grad film program. And there are 6 writers from La Fermis who come to New York, and I mix them with 6 from Columbia. And we write. It used to be 7 weeks, and we'd write a long métrage, a long scenario. Now it's just a short one. But I realize I'm only interested in writers who have a passion, who really have a passion. I become angry when I'm working with, if I have a student who's not really passionate. And I was just. Some of the people here were just in Switzerland with me at a project called Dreamago. It's a project for scenarists, and there were 11. And I thought half of them had a passion and half of them didn't, and it was just something obvious. Some of you know that I was very close with Beckett. That was a big part of my love of France. At the Spoleto Festival, a Swiss-French actress came up to me and said, "Would you like to meet Samuel Beckett? Because he would like to meet you." And when my heart started pounding again, I said yes, that I would, and I went to Paris. And I was, I suppose, 27 years old, and he didn't have any kids. I think he had this relationship with a bunch of writers, but for me, I think in this life we have our fathers of chance and our fathers of choice. And our fathers of chance are our natural fathers, and our fathers of choice are those people we choose to be like our fathers. And for me, that was certainly Beckett. And I didn't learn to imitate his writing. That wasn't so interesting to me. But his life was his integrity was something I had never imagined, that he absolutely knew who he was and was absolutely true to himself. He wasn't going to write a TV series. He knew what his purpose was, and it was a great influence and a great relief for me to know somebody like that.
You said something very interesting about the way you work with the actors, and when you wrote your screenplay, you said that you work with the actors from the beginning.
Yes.
Because you had the actor almost at the beginning of writing, so you wrote a little bit with them because they had the thing in their mouth and draft after draft.
It's something else I can't do. I've never written something for an actor at all. It's totally schizophrenic. It's only the script and the sound of the dialogue or the image in a film, and then the actor comes later. Even if Kevin was with me reading the script, what was happening that was great was he was learning the personnage, really the blood of he really knew who he was playing. And when you see My Old Lady, you're going to see a great performance, because we've all seen Kevin Kline, and this is amazing. So no, I've never written a play thinking, oh, this would be good for this, and this Estelle Parsons thing is driving me crazy, you know, because I'm going to have to write it as though it has nothing to do with these actors. I should tell you, some of you are directing. On the set, the 3 main actors in my movie were so different. They had such different styles. Kevin is definitely American and improvisational, and he's a bit of a child, and so he loves to act and loves to be the center of attention. And so I could tell him, because we had worked together so intimately, I could tell him exactly what I wanted in the scene, but exactly, just go right there without being subtle about it. And he would give me exactly what I wanted, but then he'd do the same thing plus léger, or more lighter or heavier, so that in the editing room I had really wonderful choices. If a scene was too heavy, I knew I had a take that was lighter. Maggie is a typical English actress. She arrives on the set, she knows every word. If you change 2 words, you have to have a conversation with her. It's because she's ready to go. And Kristen has her own particular style. But I need, when you see the film, you'll see in the beginning of the film, I needed Maggie to not like Kevin's character. I needed her to look at him like he was from another planet. And so when we were shooting, I would get Kevin to do exactly what I wanted, and then I could get him to improvise. And I would say, okay, do it lighter in a certain way. And he would improvise, and I had moments when Maggie would say to me, what the fuck is he doing? Like that. And those were the moments that I shot and I used. I would say, let's do another take, just go with it. And she was doing the external dialogue, but I knew the interior was, what the fuck is he doing? And it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. And that's much more for camera than it is for theater. For theater, you're sitting in a rehearsal room for 4 or 5 weeks, and you talk it through and talk it through and talk it through, and you get to the same place, of course. But this is, oh my God, it's so quick, and I learned as a director that I had to be open to change, because the worst directors I've worked with are not open to change. They come completely prepared, and it's not creative. It's just it's by the numbers. And so I had to see something that Kristen would do, because Kristen has profound emotion. She hides behind God knows what, and when it ruptures through, it's stunning. And I had to react to that and change things around her. I loved it. I just loved it. I was born to it.
What brings you directing a film? What gives it to you more than theater? What the plus did you have?
It's what film is versus theater. I mean, theater is when by the time a play opens, everybody is like a family. Everybody, I mean, you've spent so much time together talking about life from a point of view of the play, and sometimes it's so different in movies. I mean, it's not always talked about, and then there's just the different space. You know, I'm on the streets of Paris, and I can react to what happens accidentally, or what we discover on the street. I could be open to change, so it was much more immediate. And then of course there's the editing room, where you just have terrible mistakes and nobody knows about it. I mean, I was talking with George's brother, does color correction, and I had worked in television commercials on film, you know, on a moviola where the editor had film pasted to his shoes, and you know, now it's completely digital. And we were in the editing room, and I stole a day when Kevin was supposed to be sleeping, and he came out and he worked illegally but with no sound, so I could get some exterior stuff. And I had one particular shot of him on a bench in the Marais that was very, very important. And all through the film, he's wearing a T-shirt that's khaki, that's that military green. And in the editing room, I pulled the thing up on the screen, and of course he's wearing a red T-shirt because that's what he was wearing when he showed up. And I didn't realize that they could color correct it. And I said to the guy, "Oh my God, he's wearing a red T-shirt." And the color man, the colorist said, "It's not a problem." He pushed a button, and it was an exact match. I didn't know that. I didn't know that could happen. I think I'm not a kid. And so I was able to call Philippe Leguet, Tavernier. I was able to call experienced directors and say, who should I have as a designer here? Because it's not my country. It's not, you know, it's not my métier. And Philippe Lerguet gave me Limbosch, who is a great designer. When you see the film, my God, the apartment is astonishing. We had absolutely no money. Ile-de-France Film Commission found the apartment for us. It was a complete wreck. It's in Les Gobelins. It's the manufacturer des Gobelins. It's this complex. We could park our trucks there. We had a guard. It was all... And the apartment is this massive apartment that was a poubelle, and nobody had lived in it for years. There are big holes in the wall. So we could do whatever we wanted to it. Now they have a brochure saying it's a film location. Of course, that's for rent. Anyway. Do you have some questions?
Israel, I had a question for you. By chance I was passing through here and I heard a voice being overpowered and drowned out by something over there. I said, that sounds familiar. Social injustice. I mean, the Indian wants the Bronx. You know, as an Indian, at the time when you wrote that, what was the inspiration? Because the thug mentality and brutality, violence.
I was a drama student in London. And I saved my money. I had to work, and when I was very, very young, I sent a bunch of plays to the headmaster at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. I was a figurant, a kind of extra in a play, a Shakespeare play in Boston, and I met a guy who had gone to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and I thought, that is the coolest goddamn thing I've ever heard in my life. And so I sent like 6 plays to the headmaster. And they accepted me as a student, and it took me 2 years to save the money to go there. When I was in London, I was so poor. I mean, poor was beyond me. It was stupid. And Rachel was already a baby. I had a wife and a baby, and really no money, and I was trying to go to school full time. And at the Commonwealth Institute in London, every morning you could buy food that hadn't been eaten the night before. And it was like, I don't know, 50 centimes. You would get a bag of food, and I'd take that for my day. So every morning I was in a queue of people, mostly students, waiting to get this cheap, horrible food, you know. And one day, there was an Indian kid who must have been just off the boat, and he was in the full, Hindu in full native costume, big turban, and because it was England, nobody's talking to each other. Everybody's just standing politely, saying nothing. And it's a long, long time ago, and a car full of teddy boys, they were kind of 1960s skinheads, pulled up to the curb, and they started screaming this racist stuff at the Indian kid. They were screaming, "Hey Sahib, move your fucking elephant." And it was horrible, absolutely horrible. And everybody was astonished. And suddenly, the Indian kid started waving and smiling and laughing, started waving to the teddy boys who were screaming at him. And they drove away. It sort of deflected their anger. And everybody's quiet, and because I was American, I just went to the kid and I said, what the hell, what happened? What did you do? And he started speaking to me in Hindi, and he didn't speak a single word of English. And he was so happy that somebody had made human contact with him. He had been in that goddamn city for, 2-3 days. Nobody had talked to him. He didn't care what they were saying. He was just happy people were talking to him. And I started writing the play immediately. It's a play about, and I reset it in New York because I knew I was going to move to New York, and I was scared stiff of living in a big city like New York City. And it's a play about an Indian guy who comes to New York, and he's trying to get to the Bronx to see his son, and 2 hoodlums, 2 young kids, get a hold of him, and they start, and it ends up, it's really about the escalation of violence and how language can be, a wall between us. Anyway.
you don't have this kind of immediateté in cinema and theater.
I'm glad you said that.
Because when Nicolas asked earlier on what cinema gives you more than theater, I would like to say what theater gives you more than cinema, in fact, because in cinema you've got so many things to say, so many things you see you don't like in life and you would like to put in screen, and you are stuck because it's expensive. You need to find so many people that are interested by your script, and it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you are stuck with your story, and it's just put some hole in your stomach because you always see the thing you just hate and you want to talk about it and you can't.
I can tell you that's the
anger and so I never wrote for theater, but when I listened to you, I said, "Come on, we should write for theater."
I can tell you that's. I'm glad you said that because it's this question of time, and you feel passionate about something. You write a film, you find the money, you do the casting, you make the film, and 2 years or 3 years have passed and you can't remember why you wanted to do it in the first place. And with theater, after the Charlie Hebdo killings, all I could do is write. I just wanted to write a play immediately, and the play opened in Boston last week, and I just grabbed some actors. I was in Châtillon, Chardon near Lyon, and there was a festival for theater, and I just took some actors and I said, some poor woman, I said, translate this immediately. She translated, and we did it for the audience. The play is in New York in June, and if it were a film, it would be 2 years from now. It's like that. So it's always given me instant gratification is important to me, and it's given me a voice. This is so not normal. All of it. But it's great that you're here. I'm really thrilled that you're here.
Can I just ask you something?
Yes.
Hi, I'm honored to meet you. Anyway, I didn't know much about your job, but anyway, thank you. I had something to come back about what you said about kind of subterfuge you use to get people maybe not what they want, but what they need. And yes. I'd like to know, in this movie you just finished, Old Lady, what was your subterfuge in a way, from your point of view, in 2-3 ways?
Well, I mean, you're asking a question of me as a director, not as a writer, of course. Because how did I? So maybe I don't understand.
Yeah, I see.
In French.
Sorry. En fait, ce que je voulais dire par subterfuge, c'est il disait qu'il arrivait à trouver le moyen de toucher un public, pas parce qu'il voulait, mais parce dont il avait besoin. Et c'est une espèce de subterfuge. Je voulais savoir sur ce film s'il avait une façon d'expliquer le subterfuge, comment il a...
Comment est-ce qu'il a trouvé le besoin du public?
Oui.
Right. What was the...
How did you get to the
is there a need that you fulfill in that script?
What's the way?
Rather than what people would expect.
No, sorry.
It's I mean, My Old Lady is Beckett once said to me, a writer, écrivain qui explique son écriture, c'est comme un escargot qui explique sa coquille, and it's true. But I wanted to write. We all know that children are beaten up by divorce. We all know that children have a really tough time, that their planet collapses. We also know people who are 60 years old who are still talking about, like me, the damage from their childhood. And there's a piece of our brain that says, come on, get over it, you're 60 years old. But there's another piece of our brains that know they'll never get over it. It's a real tush, it's a real stain on a life. And I wanted, when I started the film, when I started the play, I thought I was writing a love letter to France. I told you that. But always when I'm writing anything, at some point, in the beginning, I think, I know that I'm taking it from here to there. And at some point I say, isn't it interesting where this is taking me? That it's taking me because I suppose I'm finding myself in it, or something that's more important to me. And I realized that I wanted to write about 60-year-olds who are so damaged. And so, I mean, the fortune cookie is, don't do that to kids, of course. But I think what's unique about the film is that it is about these older people who are so damaged and find something positive in their lives. They're healthier at the end, because I'm trying to say that as well. But in terms of subterfuge, I think the biggest thing I do always with my plays, with my writing always, is to try to use humor in the beginning to engage the audience. If there are 300 seats, there are 300 different experiences in the cinema or in the theater, and it's our job to take those three. Some guy had a fight with his wife, some woman had a bad meal, kids peed on the floor, or whatever. Everybody's had a different day when they arrive, and it's our job to pull them into our story. And I think that humor is a really important tool that we have. And I also think the first 10 minutes of a movie are possibly the most important 10 minutes. I mean, how many times have you seen a film or a play, 5 minutes into it you say, I hate this already. This is going to be really bad. It happens a lot. And it takes a long time for the film to win you back. So I think, you know, as I don't know how many of you are writing films, but my advice is spend a lot of time with the first 10 minutes and make sure that you think of an audience as people who aren't interested in your story at all, and it's your job to pull them in.
I have a question about writing, because your writing is very precise. Each word are at the right place. It's very, how do you say that, polished. It's does it take a lot of time to you, or do you immediately have the right word at the right place? I'm thinking about, for example, Balzac, which is a writer I love, and I went to see his house, and when you see his script, it's a lot of black everywhere, and change a word, and change another word, and change again and again and again. It's a very long process to write, to find the right sentence and the right word. Is it something that comes immediately to you, or not?
I think it's different for every play, of course, or for every. I know Sam Shepard is a writer you probably admire, and when he was young and turning out a lot of theater, he would only do a kind of premier jet, and he would say to theater, you can cut anything you want, but don't add anything. And he would then write another. And I think his idea was, I could rewrite this play for the next 2 years and make it better, but maybe it will be 10% better. It is what it is, so I'll move along. And of course, there was an energy to his early plays that was remarkable. And they were poetic, and they were carefully written. There was an English writer I had lunch with once, Simon Gray. He was a lovely playwright. He used to drink 2 or 3 bottles of champagne. He would be completely pissed. He had no idea what he had written, and he'd write dead drunk, and then he'd become sober, and he'd read what he had written and say, "Ah, this is pretty good," and then he'd do some rewriting. And I mean, so everybody is different. I rewrite a lot, and I have to say, because I'm old enough, the computer is really dangerous because it's so easy to rewrite, to throw things away. It was in the old days when I used to write with a pen and have to use scotch and put the piece down. Maybe I was more careful about rewriting than, I don't know. Anyway,
You think rewriting might destroy things?
I think it certainly in my life it's made things become less good. I know that if I stay at the typewriter or the computer too long, that I stop writing and I'm just typing, that there's a limit at some point. How many of you are writers? How many of you are writing scripts? So I can teach you a good trick. It's probably my best trick. When you finish writing at the end of the day, at the end of your writing session, instead of leaving, before you leave your computer or your desk, write instructions, very simple instructions to yourself, what to do when you start the next day, because I realize the most difficult part of writing is getting started in the next day. And so if you just say 1, do this, 2, do this, 3, do this, then when you wake in the morning like a good girl or a good boy, just do that, and you'll discover, oh, you've gotten started. That's my best trick.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I had a question about translated work, because see, I'm between France and America working as an actor, and I feel like my mind is in English and my heart is in French. So I don't know, in terms of like maintaining the authenticity of the characters when it's translated. When you see your work, do you have thoughts about that?
Well, I certainly, you have to be lucky with a translator. And I've had wonderful translators in France, but Latvia or Slovenia, I mean, how do I know what's going on? And I tend to, with theater, of course, I tend to stand in the back of the theater and watch the audience. I'm not watching the actors. And if they don't laugh when they're supposed to laugh, or if it's une pièce pour trois mouchoirs when they're not moved, I blame the translator, of course. But I've learned, because some of my plays are translated into like 30 languages. It's a lot. I've learned that every culture is different. Something that's very funny to a Frenchman isn't funny at all to an American, and something that's very funny to an American can be not at all funny to a Frenchman. So you have to choose translators you really trust. And the best is to find writers, people who are really writers. And because you can sit with them and explain what something wants to be, but they know how to. Sometimes you'll get somebody who's an academic translator and they understand exactly what you want, but they don't have the language skill. So it's not comment dirais-tu?
Subtle.
Subtle.
Merci.
Yes. Somebody else? Are we done?
Israel had a question about the dynamics of the theatre versus picture cutting. Now, you said you came from the commercials world, and I wanted to know how much freedom or flexibility you allow the editor in the cutting room to work with the material.
I worked with 2 editors, actually. I worked with, at the same time, I worked with a very experienced guy named Jacob. I must have looked at, because we edited in New York, not in France, because of the tax credit in New York, and also I could ride my bicycle to the editing room, which was no small matter. I didn't tell you why Kristen Scott Thomas said yes to doing the film, and I always suspected it was because she lived 6 minutes from the set. She could just come immediately. But the woman who was assistant editor was made such a contribution that I convinced the editor to accept her as an equal, and so they both took credit on the film. So I would say, I mean, throughout this process, there was no question in my mind that everybody knew more than I did about what they did. I had Almodovar's sound guy, Jean-Paul Muzel, oh my God, we didn't have to do any kind of post sound if we didn't want to. With the creaky old French, everything was perfect. He was great. He was amazing, and I knew from day one that I had to trust him. He had done great work, and with the editors it was, except I was a strong personality in the editing room, and I don't think I was easy. I don't know if I'm ever easy, but.
What fun do you get out of adapting one of your own plays into a film?
You know, I'm such a theater person that when I see My Old Lady on screen, sometimes I think, wow, Kevin was really good tonight. And I don't realize it's a film and it's locked in. But it's so great to have a film that works, and it's always going to work. And when, for example, Très chère Mathilde, the theater play with Line Renaud, she was very good. It wasn't quite the way I saw Mathilde. When I saw it in Russia with Elvis Presley look-alike, it wasn't. And so you never know what you're getting when you go from theater to theater, and it can work beautifully, and then it doesn't. With a film, when you're the filmmaker, when you've written the film and you've directed the film, if there's a mistake, it's your mistake, and I like that. That's really cool. And when it's somebody else's mistake, it's not so easy to live with. Is that an answer? Yeah. Okay.
You say that you don't want to adapt a book for a play. But would you adapt a play, none of yours, for a film?
No. I mean, come on, I'm 76 years old. I'm not going to do 10 more films. So I feel like I want to do my own work and let somebody else do that. I just don't need to do that.
So what is your next film you want to shoot?
My daughter wrote to me this morning, and I said, I'm driving myself crazy because I've actually written 3 different first drafts, premières from 3 different plays of mine. And she wrote to me this morning, and she said, Dad, we'll do all 3. It's okay. So I think she's right. I want to do The Indian Wants the Bronx as a film. It's something she's pushing me to do. It's such a terrible time. We're in. I mean, look at the world that we're living in. Look at us, how lucky we are. But look what's really going on in the world now, and we have to talk about it. And racism is, you know, it's the stupidest thing I've seen in my life. I've never seen anything dumber than racism. When people are different, there's such an opportunity to learn and to close down that process and just say everybody's got to look like us and sound like us and live like us. It's so stupid, and it's something I feel I want to address, and I have this play, and why not? I don't know if it's something that there's a big audience for it. This is something I didn't say that I should say, and it's probably good advice. Because I was the age that I was, I said to myself, I made myself a promise, if I couldn't get great actors, I wasn't going to do the film. I didn't feel that I had 2 years to waste. I didn't want to do a film that would come and go in a week, the way most films do. And you're living in France, and what were there, 300 films here last year? There are too many films. So many films come and go. Just they arrive, friends and family go to see it, and it's gone. And so I really, it's not like Maggie Smith and Kevin Kline and Kristen Scott Thomas and Pinot were just waiting for my phone call. It's an attack that you have to make, and I understood because of my age, that I had to do it. I just had to do it. I couldn't possibly have lived with myself if I wasted 2 years on a film that nobody saw. And I knew that if I had not just famous actors, but if I had really great actors who were famous actors, that it would give me the first week in the cinema, maybe 2 weeks. Audiences would come to see those actors. And I was right. When we opened in France, my little film was the first film in Paris that week, or that day anyway, the first day. I think we were number 5 for the week. And I can't really take credit for that, except I got those actors, and those actors got that audience, and we're doing very well with the film now. Now I can smile and say, okay, people like the film and they're sending their friends. But it's very, very important advice. If you don't have the really right actor, don't do it. It's too hard to write a good film.
But if we have really something to say, we think that cinema is a good support to say things. Sometimes it's difficult to say, okay, now I will not do the movie because I don't have great actors or famous actors. Sometimes actors, even if they are not famous, can be very good for your film. But of course, you may not have the same audience. Of course, and the same. No, because it's a low budget. It's not a very big budget, but.
Well, again, for me, at my age, I just had to say, if I don't have the actors, I'm not going to do it. I'll write a play and people will see it.
Yeah, because you can tell story with theater.
You can.
Yeah.
I find that when something insists on being a film, it's something about space and time. You know, there are qualities to film that don't exist in theater. And there are plays of mine that I've had to do on the radio because they travel through space and time, and it doesn't work so well in theater. I've noticed this, and maybe you've thought of this already. When we dream at night, we dream in the form of film. We don't dream in the form of theater. So that everybody seems comfortable with film. Everybody in the world seems comfortable with film because they see movies every night in their dreams. I've never known anybody who dreams like theater with big long monologues and you know, blackouts and all of that. Yes.
I have a question. You said don't do anything without passion. So when you write, can you point out the core of your passion? Is it like a message, like racism? Is it to see yourself on stage enacted? Is it the characters? So what's driving you? I mean, or the language? I mean, just people are in love with the language and, you know, love the way they express something. So what is it for you?
I don't know. I mean, I once had a doctor say to me, it's good that there are people like you, but I'm glad I'm not you. I knew what he was talking about, you know, but I love my life. I think I'm living the life of my dreams, but everybody may not want to live like this. With what I call passion is, you know, a kind of crazy drive that I've always had, and a crazy energy that I've always had. And I mean, my normal day was getting up and running 5 or 6 miles before I did anything else, and then I'd finish work and run another 5 or 6 miles. I'm sure it's all, you know, psychoanalysts could figure it out. But if I see suffering, if I see suffering, I feel it. I don't know why, but I do, and maybe it just attaches itself to my. So. Sometimes a passion can come from something very negative, really, and something you want to fix, and you feel like you can help people. I don't know. I think when you're young, it's me, look at me, I'm a writer, you know, certify that. But I think at a certain point, if your work gets done, and you start to think about the public. You start to think, what do people need? And I mean it when I say, as an artist, as artists, we have a responsibility to think about what people need and to address that. And if you get it right, they'll show up. They will show up.
I have a question.
Got everybody dead silent. Good point.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said you want to live in France. Why? Why is it so?
I didn't say that. I said I want to die in France. It's not, it's not the same thing.
Why is this love story with France? How does it begin? And
Dans une vie antérieure, j'étais un escargot adoré des Français. I don't know. It's so crazy. I don't know. It's mysterious. I think in this life, if you love me, I love you, and I started coming here really because I wanted to be close with Beckett, and I would really work to get my plays on here because it never gave me a ton of money. My play Le Premier played at the Théâtre de Poche-Montparnasse for 11 years. Can you imagine? And it was just a little theater, and it didn't make me rich, but it gave me enough money to come back and forth. And I wanted to have my plays on here. I wanted to be here. So sometimes I would start a play here in translation before I did it in New York. And it just became apparent that I had this weird, odd life, you know, and I never really, you know, you can tell I don't speak French well, and I certainly can't write in French, and I'm very scared to give up my own language. It's curious.
do you think France and French people inspire you more than American people?
They inspire me differently. A French audience is wonderful. It's much better than an American audience. I mean, you can't imagine an American audience applauding actors in a theater for 5 minutes the way they do in a French theater. It's remarkable. I mean, there's so much of a gift. An American audience claps once, half the audience is putting their coats on and leaving. People clap in the cinema at the end of My Old Lady. It's unheard of, absolutely unheard of. And French audiences are really attentive. In the theater, they really listen. I think it's more intelligent audience. I don't know. It's a better educated audience. The French film crew, we could talk about cinema. It wasn't like a labor union. They really loved films. So I find this very special, and it makes me really want to work here again more and more and more. And I love directing plays in France. I like French theater actors less than American theater actors. I think that American theater actors are sometimes better trained and more easier to direct, more open to direct, less likely to see themselves in a certain fixed way. But maybe it's because American theater actors work more. Maybe French theater actors don't work enough. I don't know. There's more of a tendency, there is more of a spirit in France to say, we can't do that. And in America, it's like crazy. Everybody's saying, yes, we can do anything, so it's a different culture.
It's less in our culture, theater. It's more in American or
That's your life.
English culture.
Don't you think it's your life rather than in your life? I mean, when you talk to a theater actor in France, they're just as crazy as a theater actor. They think the whole world is theater.
Yeah, but less people go to theater than in England or in America, I imagine. I don't know for America, but I know in England there is queue and queue and queue, and they just love theater. In France, it's a little bit less.
I don't know. I mean, London theater is a big tourist attraction. It's mostly.
It's got a lot of great actors.
Broadway is really for tourists. It's not. You don't ever see New Yorkers at a Broadway show. They can't afford it. It's just people from out of town. The real theater for me in Paris and in New York are small theaters with Houchette that's very special. It's got 30 seats. Let me tell you a story. quickly if I can. My son is one of the Beastie Boys. Some of you know that. Some of you don't know the Beastie Boys. Anyway, one of my sons is one of the Beastie Boys. So I was in Paris, and a friend of mine said there's a sculpture show on Pont des Arts, and it's great. You have to see it. So I was doing my running, and I ran to Pont des Arts, and it wasn't great. It was okay. It was papier mâché and a little cliché, but I looked down from the Pont des Arts, and there was a Peniche Théâtre, and I could see the affiche, and it looked like an image from my play Le Baiser de la Veuve. So I went down, and it was my play being done on this Peniche. So I went onto the Peniche, and the guy who dirige the Peniche Théâtre said, no, you can't come in, the play has started. And I said, mais je suis Horowitz, and he went, no, c'est pas vrai. And so he was absolutely shocked, and he took me in, and it was my play, and there were 35 people like this, crammed into a Peniche like sardines, and they were watching my play. So I watched for 10 or 15 minutes, and I left, and I shook his hand, and I thought to myself, j'étais très fier de moi-même. I thought, this is really a measure of success, to have a play on a Peniche, on the Seine. Wow. And I was doing quite a long run, and I ran to Bercy, and I ran past the Bercy Omnisport, and the Beastie Boys were coming to the Bercy Omnisport the next week with 35,000 seats. And I thought, well, that's another measure of success. Is there another question?
I have a last question. But do you have a question? Okay.
Did you ever have a screenplay that didn't get made and that you
do I have a hand on this arm? Of course.
But I mean, which one? Because remember that story from Paul Mazursky. You know, the kind of screenplays that didn't get made is the ones that were a mirror of Hollywood, and apparently Hollywood doesn't like looking at itself.
I've never lacked confidence as a writer, to be perfectly honest. I always felt that I was right and they were wrong, and I just got on with it. I never really, maybe I will later in life, but I always felt that I worked hard, and that I understood that Hollywood was a big business, and that maybe the screenplay that I wrote was no longer like the thing that had already succeeded, because there was always that impulse in Hollywood, with Hollywood studios, to make a film exactly like the one that just succeeded before that, and it takes a while. But I can tell you two stories. One is a story of David Mamet, who had written the sequel to The Postman Always Rings Twice. And he was fired by the studio from the job, and he saw Sidney Lumet on the street, and Lumet said, "What are you doing?" And Mamet said, "Oh, I'm doing this or that." And he said to Lumet, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I've been offered a remake of The Postman Always Rings Twice." And Mamet said, "Oh shit, I was fired from that." And Lumet said, "Well, give me your screenplay. Let me see your screenplay." He read David's screenplay and said, "That's the screenplay I'm going to make." Went back to the studio. The studio said, "Fine." And that was the other story. I can't tell you publicly who the guys are, but let's just say they're two brothers who write and direct films, and they're American and Jewish, and when they were kids, they wrote a movie. When they were young guys, they got at NYU, they wrote a movie, submitted the first draft, and they were fired from the movie. They were paid a little bit of money. 20 years later, they were very famous guys, and they were asked to do a rewrite job on a movie for a lot of money. They read the movie and they went, "This is very familiar." And it was like the 18th draft of the movie they had been fired from. They went, they found their draft in the file, they sent it in, they got paid, and life went on.
Hollywood doesn't take criticism of itself.
Sorry?
Hollywood doesn't take criticism of itself very well. I mean, if you write a screenplay about the workings of the business or the way things go there, for instance, that Paul Masterclass screenplay that never made it. It's about a writer. You know, he's washed up. He can't get anything done. He's blocked to the nth degree, and he sits behind his computer, and suddenly there's a pop-up, and it's the devil. And he say, "Do you want to write a successful screenplay?" Yes, yes. So he makes a deal, and then a year later he has an Academy Award, and then he basically has to sell the soul to the devil, and the kind of things that he has to do in order to get fame again.
Sounds like an autobiography.
Yeah.
From Mazursky.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'm too old for this, but we need an enemy.
Yeah.
We need to hate something out there. So Hollywood is easy to hate. It was kind of fun when I worked in Hollywood, and now I just said I had an email from our own Winkler this morning, and who was best man on our wedding, and I wrote lots and lots of scripts for him. He produced Rocky and Raging Bull, and he was the producer of Des Frères du Sang years ago. And he said, "When are you coming out?" And I realized I don't, but and I said, I tend to head east, and I tend to come here. But I said, but if I change direction, I'll let you know. And but I don't have terrible feelings about Hollywood. It was what I have a house thanks to Hollywood. I fed my kids. I wrote scripts. It was exciting. I met exciting people. Is that my life to live there and do that? No. But is it the enemy? I don't think so.
The mirror, that they don't like looking at themselves. Sometimes when they're ugly.
I don't know who they are. That's the thing. It's always the big.
Hollywood doesn't like looking at the reflection of itself.
Let me tell you one last story. My son, our son called from New York the other day, and he said, "Dad, I just had the craziest thing happen to me." I said, "What happened?" He was at a spinning class. Do you know what spinning is? It's a bicycle. It's now a big, say the à la mode, where you sit on a stationary bike, and he does it because there are very pretty young women who do this, and so he goes to this class, and there was you get a fixed bicycle. You get bicycle number 32. So he couldn't find bicycle number 32. And he said it was full of really pretty young women, and they're all looking at him, waiting for him to find his bicycle so they could start the class. And he couldn't find his bicycle. And he was looking for a coach. And finally he saw a coach, and he waved to the coach, and the coach waved back. And he realized it was a mirror, and he was waving to himself. So maybe the mirror that Hollywood, that we hold up to Hollywood, we're really seeing ourselves. I don't know.
I have maybe a last question. You say that you're on Earth to find why you're here. So did you find why you're on Earth?
Why I'm here now?
Yeah. Why you're on Earth? Why are you born? You told us you every day you try to find why you are on Earth. Did you find it?
I hope it's for this. I mean, I hope I don't discover at the end of my life that I really should have been playing football for a living, that this was the right thing, but it feels like the right thing. And I hope you all find your life.
Thank you.